boka, and the Hebrew for good is tov. So let's say to each other, boka tov.
Boka tov.
Can we do it again? Boka tov. Now let's go back to English. Now some people think that Luke was not a doctor. However, two important people think that he was a doctor. One is St. Paul, who referred to Luke as my beloved physician. He accompanied him on his journeys. And the other person is the Reverend Peter Holmes, our vicar. So that settles it. He was a doctor. As am I. So how can I talk to you about these absolutely supernatural happenings, and particularly the raising of the widow's son? Now, first of all, my medical profession keeps trying to explain these miracles away. They say, well, perhaps they didn't know the guy was dead. Perhaps they couldn't diagnose death in those days. They didn't have sophisticated equipment. I put it to you that junior doctors certify deaths with what I'm standing in. They feel pulses, they look in eyes. Of course he was dead. And wasn't it absolutely sensational that Jesus went up to help the widow and to raise her son? Because, as you know, if you're a widow and you lose your son in those days, it's not all that good nowadays, but in those days, it would mean that no one would be looking after you. And as Pete pointed out to me the other day, this is one of the few miracles where Jesus went up to help. Most of the time, the medical miracles occurred when he was there and people came up to him. What about the miracles? There were 39 recorded in the Bible. Most of them were medical miracles, exorcisms, fights against the natural powers, turning water into wine, walking across the Sea of Galilee. 2 weeks ago, Sophia and I were in a boat on the Sea of Galilee, and we looked over to see if there were any reeds there that you could walk over, because many people said, oh, you just walked across the reeds. You didn't. It's a very deep lake. So these miracles happened, and we cannot explain them away with any form of sophisticated medical interpretation. Imagine if Peter went out to the London road here and stopped a funeral cortege, 3 black Daimlers, many mourners' cars, stopped it in the traffic, went up to the coffin, touched it, and the dead person came out. It would be sensational. We would be crawling with reporters, CBS, ITV, BBC. This would be a sensation for months and months and months. And it was, as you heard, it spread through Judea. It spread through Judea. This is some marital disharmony going on. The news spread through Judea, as it would through Kingston, through the whole world. And you've got to say, why did Jesus have to do this? 39 miracles. John, in his Gospel, records that there were more that took place, but they didn't write them down. Why did he have to do this? Well, on the 19th of March, Stella read us out the explanation. And if I can just quote from John 14, chapter 14, verses 11 to 14. This is what Stella told us on the 19th of May. Believe me when I say that I am in the Father and the Father is in me. Or at least believe on the evidence of the miracles themselves. I tell you the truth, anyone who has faith in me will do what I have been doing. He will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father. And I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Son may bring glory to the Father. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it. And so Jesus was talking to his disciples. He wanted to convince his disciples who he was. You may argue that without the miracles, Jesus was just a clever young rabbi going around saying, I am the living proof of Isaiah's prophecy. But he didn't. He had a message that would resonate throughout the world. And it's that I'm going to concentrate on this morning. Because the message that he wanted to take his disciples to take out to the world is that Christianity, the followers of Jesus, believe in respect for children, believe in respect for women, believe in respect for the poor, believe in respect for the hungry. And that was the message that he wanted to give. Now, he could have chosen different miracles. This was the Roman Empire. What would King Herod have done? He'd have had a massive palace. He'd have put on parties if he'd had the power of miracles. But what did Jesus do? He didn't make great palaces. He was tempted by the devil to do that, and he rejected it. What did he do? He went around helping poor, ill people. Remember the medical miracles. The withered hand. The lady who was bleeding heavily just touched his cloak and was cured. The man with heart failure. The man that couldn't hear. The man that couldn't speak. The man that couldn't see. These were not great, wonderful acts to set the world on fire, but to those people that needed it, it was amazing for them. And so we must accept miracles as Jesus' proof who he was. But long after the miracles had gone, his teaching was resonating around the world, and I want to come on to that. So, if you don't mind, I'll leave Luke and we'll talk about Galatians. And I start with an apology, because although I know the geography of the Eastern Mediterranean in modern terms, I don't know the geographical names in biblical terms. And if you're like me, I'm going to give you a map. Would you pass over that? Would you kind of pass over that? Now, this is a map to show you where Galatia is. And Galatia now is what we call central Turkey. And until the last 2 weeks, people left Ankara alone, the capital of Turkey, but it's been in the news all the time. And you can see Paul's journeys, and you can see where Galatia is. And Paul is writing to the Galatians. They were strange people. They started life in the south of France. They were Celts, or as they're known in France, Gauls. And that's where we get the word Gallic from. And so they started life, and they were moving across Europe, quite brave warriors, and they ended up in central Turkey, around the Ankara region. And that's what we're talking about. Now, I mention that because Peter mentioned Galatians last week, and we're going to talk about Galatians. And now you and I know where Galatia is. They were pagans, and Paul converted them, and his letter that we heard this morning is telling them off, really. It's saying they were going back to their pagan ways, and Paul was saying, wake up, get back to the worship of God. And he starts off his letter with telling them about his conversion. And this story, I'm sure, is very well known to you. On the road to Damascus, a shining light blinded him for 3 days. And then, after he realised that God had come into his life and that he should follow Jesus, the scales from his eyes fell. We all know that. And as you heard from the reading, he stopped persecuting Christians, and he started to worship God and to spread the good word about Jesus. And so many people have been converted, and I want you to think about your own conversion, because many people will have accepted Jesus in their lives in different ways. For many of us, we knelt at the end of our bed, our mother said, put your hands together, close your eyes, and thank God for all the good things that have happened to you. And a very gentle introduction. But there will be people here who Jesus came into their lives in a blinding flash. If you go to the great feast, you can talk to some of the garden people, and they will tell you the minute, the day, the year when Jesus came into their lives. And maybe it's 2 o'clock in the morning, lying on the pavement, waiting for help, and up comes a street pastor, reads some Bible stories to them and tells them that they're worthwhile, that somebody does care about them, and at that moment Jesus entered their lives. For some, they didn't have a blinding flash. Maybe it's a gradual realisation. And maybe for Paul, whose conscience was pricked when he held the coats of the people that stoned Stephen to death, maybe Paul was moving towards accepting the following of Jesus. But he puts it down to the road of Damascus, and it's very important that he did convert. I'm going to tell you at the end about one person whose conversion to Christianity made a phenomenal change. to the Roman Empire, and that's about Constantine. I'll come on to him in a moment. Let me just leave you on this topic with somebody else who was converted. See if you can guess who this is. One Sunday, I put on one of the few clean jackets I had and went over to the Trinity United Church of Christ on 95th Street on the south side of Chicago. And I heard the Reverend Jeremiah A. Wright delivered a sermon entitled The Audacity of Hope. And during the course of that sermon, he introduced me to someone called Jesus Christ. I learned that my sins could be redeemed. I learned that those things I was too weak to accomplish myself, he would accomplish with me if I placed my trust in him. And in time, I came to see faith as more than a comfort to the weary or a hedge against death, but rather as an active, palpable agent in the world and in my own life. Any ideas who did that? Well, that was Barack Obama, the most powerful man on the planet. So conversion for people can be very important, but I'd like to finish by telling you about Constantine, the Roman Emperor Constantine. He was a powerful general, as all were in the Roman Empire. You didn't get to become the Caesar without being tough. And I will pass a few pictures of him. I'm sure you want to see him. This is what they thought he looked like in the 19th century. I'll pass a few pictures round, and maybe our children will fill him in colours. Maybe they won't want to. Maybe they'll be frightened by Constantine. So let me tell you a little bit about Constantine. He was the result of a relationship between a barmaid in what is modern Serbia and a rising young army officer, Constantine. It's not clear whether they were married or not, but the great thing was that the barmaid, Helena, was a Christian. And she brought up her son, Constantine, as a Christian. And this was very important. And the influence of women bringing up their children in the Christian faith was very important for the development of Christianity in the early days. And he was a brave young man, and he started to rise up through the army ranks. And when his father, Constantine, who was by that time the Caesar, the emperor, he was over in York in the United Kingdom, putting down rebellions. We were very, very naughty in the Roman Empire, if you remember. Putting down rebellions. In York, Constantine died, and Constantine became emperor. And as soon as he became emperor in AD 305, he laid down an act of religious tolerance, because for the previous 300 years, since the death of Jesus, the Roman Empire had made great efforts to stamp Christianity out. What Jesus said was completely against what they wanted to hear in the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire stretched, as you know, all the way around the Mediterranean. It took wheat and grain from Egypt and sent it to Rome. It took over Syria to protect the silk trade, the spice trade, so that it could bring spices to Rome. And it taxed everybody from Spain, France, Germany, Syria, Palestine, all the way around to Egypt. It taxed the people and sent the money to Rome. And anybody who said that was a bad thing, as you know, got put to the sword. Christians went around saying, this is not what we want to hear. We want love and respect. Now, Peter showed you a picture of a Roman soldier last week, and you saw what a fearful and fearsome thing that was. And the Roman soldier would write back to his wife and say, well, I'm very pleased that you're pregnant. If it's a boy, keep the baby. If it's a girl, throw it away. And you can imagine that when Jesus said, love and respect women, love and respect children, love and respect the poor, this didn't go down too well in the Roman Empire. And two emperors in particular, Diocletian, spent 10 years trying to wipe out all Christians in the early world. And Hadrian, the one that built the wall, put down 10,000 Christians in one sitting. He killed them all. And so Constantine came along in 305 and said there will be religious tolerance, and you will let people develop their own religious beliefs without persecution. And the numbers of Christians shot through the roof. As you can see, in AD 250, there was only 1 million. In AD 300, there were 6 million. And in AD 350, after Constantine, there was 34 million. And that is out of a Roman Empire of 60 million. So more than half the people are being converted, thanks to Constantine. Now, I want to finish on telling you one more thing about Constantine. He was a great general, and he fought his way from the United Kingdom in York, and he went across Europe to take over from another Caesar who was trying to take his place, and he met the forces at the Battle of Milvian Bridge in Italy. So there was Constantine with his troops, and there was Maximilius, who was trying to take over as Caesar. It was a battle for the Roman Empire. And the night before the battle, Constantine saw the vision of a cross. And he also saw the vision of the two letters that make up the name of Christ in Greek. And they're called the Chi Rho. And he heard the voice that said to him in the dream, "By this sign shall you conquer." Now, you probably all know that Christ in Greek looks like that. And the first letters of Christ in Greek is the Chi, which we would take to be an X. And the second letter is the Rho, which we look and think, looks like a P to us, but that's the Chi Rho. And so he fixed on his shield the combined symbol, which you may have seen before. In fact, it's up there. Well, it was the last time I looked. I can't see it now. Perhaps it's the vision. There's a red one, isn't it? Yes, there it is. So that's the Chi Rho. He put it on the shield of his troops, and they won every battle. He was emperor for 30 years, and with the Chi Rho on his shield, he conquered all. And when he became emperor, his mother, Helena, persuaded him to become a Christian, and he was the first Christian emperor, and he did so much to preserve Christianity. He's also famous for changing Byzantium, which is on your maps there, which we now call Istanbul. He changed it to Constantinople. And important to us, he convened a big meeting of all the church leaders to establish our creed. Credo, the Latin word for I believe. And they, in this conference in Nicaea, wrote out the beliefs of Christians, which we take to be the Nicene Creed. He also changed marriage laws. Under pagans, people married at 12. He said marry at 20. It's more likely to be helpful. And finally, a word about his mother, who was such an important influence. She is a saint now, St. Helena, and when her son became emperor, she went on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land in 326, and she built churches on all the holy relics. And it's said that she also preserved the cross on which Jesus died. But we now can go to Palestine to see the holy relics, because she went to put churches on the places where Jesus was crucified, on where he was born, on the Sermon on the Mount, where he fed the 5,000. And it was Helena, a woman, that preserved it for us. And I would like you to have a memory of Constantine. So I went to a coin shop opposite the British Museum, and I said, show me some coins from Constantine. I'm going to preach about Constantine. And they said, oh, well, we've got some coins here, but I don't think that you'll be too impressed with these. And I have here some coins that were stamped in the Constantine era. Perhaps you'd like to pass them over. And I thought, well, I can't leave you with these little coins. These are the coins that he stamped when he was emperor here in England. So I went across to the British Museum and I said, I want some impressive coins from the Roman era. And they said, what about these? We've got Augustus on the front. What do you want? We've got the British Museum on the back. And I said, are these solid gold? They said, no, they're solid chocolate. So these are going to be the prizes for the children that have coloured in Constantine. But what I would like to leave you with is a memory of Constantine. Now, there's an icon in a Russian museum of Jesus crowning Constantine. And I can't get it to you because the museum's closed, because it's having a new wing. And so I thought, well, we don't have icons in this country anymore, do we? And then I rushed into the kitchen, and on the fridge were 4 icons holding up those dustbin notices from the council. 4 icons, magnetic icons. 3 we have of innocent fruit smoothies, and 1 of Homer Simpson. And I thought, fridge magnets are the icons of our era. So I contacted a company called Zazzle and said, have you got any icons of Constantine receiving his crown from Jesus? It was painted in the 9th century AD. They said, of course we have, sir. How many would you like? So I said, well, I'll have 60. They said, it'll be there in the morning. So I'd like you all to take home a modern icon. They split up. A modern icon of Constantine, and stick it on your fridge. If you can pass those around. Stick it on your fridge, and you will never forget the man that preserved so many Christian lives. And when I finish speaking, I hope that Peter will lead our prayers to help. Will lead our prayers into praying for all those people who suffered so badly in the Roman Empire and in the early church for their faith.